I know we still believe in free trade if it's fair. We don't have fair trade. There's currency manipulation, there's government subsidized, there's government owned. How do we compete with Mexico when the average wage for a welder in Mexico is $1.75 an hour? We're paying $30, $40 an hour for welders here. We can't compete with that.
Hollie, welcome to the Manufacturing Report podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. It's really an honor to be here.
Well, likewise, I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time, and in particular, your advocacy for what we call Buy America laws, not only in New Hampshire, but in other states and nationally as well. And we'll get to that. But before we do that, I'm wondering if we could share with our listeners how you came in to this issue. Like what was your interest? Because I know you are the CEO of a family ironworks that's been around for many decades now.
Almost 70 years. Yes. Yeah. I came into it in a very roundabout way. My background actually is nursing. I'm a psychiatric and a geriatric nurse practitioner, and I always knew I'd be in the family business of structural steel, and I was in and out over my career in nursing. I did estimating, I did data inputting. But when my dad died in 99, and I came in full time, and I realized I didn't have the technical background that most of my competitors had, but I wanted to make my mark. And I thought, how do I make a mark in the steel industry as a nurse? And I thought, well, nurses are advocates. We're patient advocates. So I will advocate for the steel industry. And that's how I got into Buy America. I thought, we'll advocate for our domestic fabricators. And that's when I started, early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, which is remarkable. Thank you for doing that, because I think that, there's a lot of business owners, and you know this better than I do, where the day-to-day demands of like keeping the business running, dealing with regulatory issues, dealing with customers, dealing with suppliers, dealing with marketing, dealing with hiring and training, it can be overwhelming. And so to find some space for advocacy is truly remarkable, because you had to probably carve hours out of your home life to do that. But let's talk specifically about, Novel Ironworks, and I guess why Buy America is important for fabricators like your company, Hollie.
It's very important. We in New England especially have been very hard hit by foreign fabrication imports, unfairly traded, especially since NAFTA. Since NAFTA actually, it's taken off. But in the mid 2015, right around there, it really got bad. When you look at some of the work that's being done in Massachusetts, the public money that's being spent on foreign fabricated structural steel, over 90%, close to 95% of the public schools in Massachusetts are being fabricated by foreign fabricated structural steel that's unfairly traded. And the research shows, on a conservative level, that for every dollar spent on construction, $1.50 gets reinvested into the community. And our public dollars are supposed to be supporting our communities, not foreign communities. So they pay me, I pay my employees take that money and they go to the grocery store, they go out for dinner. That money gets reinvested over and over again. But when that goes to a foreign fabricator, that money goes out of the country. The money spent on the job goes out of the country, the reinvestment potential is lost, and we're reinvesting in foreign countries.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And in New England, we have lost a lot of competitors over the last couple decades to foreign competition.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because, as you're either talking to state legislators or to the public about this, I have to believe that most citizens, most public officials assume that those tax dollars are going for American products, And I'm wondering if they're like, well, that can't be. I mean, just because the response to me has been kind of really surprising. When you raise up that no, a lot of this is coming from overseas, I think that shocks people.
What I hear more even is that people just want the lowest legislators. I want the lowest price because
Hmm.
I'm responsible to the taxpayer. But that's so short-sighted because they don't realize that they're losing the reinvestment of those tax dollars, and that reinvestment into the local community is going to generate more taxes.
Yeah.
And it's going to be for the betterment of the community. So people have to really have the long game. They have to realize that we're investing. We're investing in jobs. We lose jobs. We lose community tax dollars. We lose businesses. And you have to really keep the long game. And a lot of the legislators that we've come in contact with don't have that perspective. It's the short dollar they're looking at.
Right, right. And so, from a business perspective, I'm wondering if you could share with the listeners a bit about the products that your company makes and other fabricators make, because no, like the average citizen isn't going out and buying directly from you, like some fabricated metal, but it's all around them every day, whether they know it or not. But
Right.
can you share some of that, Holly?
So we do actually sell some right to the direct customer because
Okay.
we will
All
do
right.
anything from a simple beam for somebody's house if they want to put something in the garage or an
I got
open span in the
you. Okay.
house to these high rises in Boston. So
Yeah.
we buy the raw material. We buy only domestic unless there are certain sizes that are not rolled in the United States.
Mhm.
We buy the raw material. We'll cut it, structural steel beams. We'll cut it. We'll drill it. We'll punch it. Then we put attachments on it like a plate or an angle. And then we bring it out to the job site and we will put up the skeleton, the metal skeleton, the steel
Mhm.
skeleton of the building.
Yeah.
So you'll see them. And we do also do the erection. So you'll see it in Boston. Unfortunately, a lot of the cranes in Boston are all foreign fabricated, putting up foreign fabricated steel.
And so I guess here's the thing that is encouraging is that instead of just saying, this is inevitable and there's nothing that we can do about it, you and others said, let's do something about it. And so talk us about that journey.
So many of us in the structural steel industry, we're family owned, especially in New England. We're all family owned businesses, multi generational, in not just family ownership, but it's family employees. So we've had fathers, sons, and grandfathers working for us at one time. We've had mothers and sons, brothers, aunts, and uncles. So it's family. And we are friendly competitors in New England because, for instance, Capone Iron, who we work really closely with on the Buy American, his dad and my dad were friendly competitors.
Yeah.
Now we're competitors, and both of us have our sons in the business. So there's enough, there's enough business for all of us,
Hmm.
but we need to be able to protect our workers and to make sure that there's enough work that they can go home and keep the lights on at home. So we need to have strong Buy America legislation to protect not just the businesses, but our employees and their families and their ways of life.
Yeah.
And people have to realize that it's not just the companies who are advocating for it, but think about the restaurants or the dry cleaners that our employees are supporting. They're directly impacted by our strong Buy America.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so our listeners know, when we're talking about Buy America, it's not like we're saying that you as a consumer have to buy everything American. I mean, that's a great thing to do, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about publicly financed public works projects that
Correct.
utilize iron and steel and fabricated products like that. And you and your colleagues discovered that a lot of this infrastructure was being outfitted with foreign fabricated, metal and iron. And let's talk about that and where you've had some success, I guess, in terms of getting some things signed into law, Holly.
So Structural Steel Fabricators of New England have been working on this issue for several decades, almost three full decades. And we finally got a foothold in New Hampshire. We had brought a bill in the early 2000s to New Hampshire, and it was fought. Actually, it was the Associated General Contractors who fought us at that
Yeah.
time. But we brought it back again, and we got it passed in, I'm going to say about 5 years ago in New Hampshire. And it wasn't as strong as we wanted it. It said may. If for publicly funded jobs, you may use domestically
Hmm.
fabricated. And surprisingly, it was AGC who brought the bill back the following year and asked for it to be strengthened to shall. You shall use, because it leveled the playing field.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we now have a very good Buy American bill in New Hampshire. We've had one in Maine.
Hmm.
It passed the House and Senate, and the governor vetoed it.
Right. Right. Which we thought
We
was the wrong decision. Yes.
very she had my understanding she had wrong information about the impact it would have. We have one in Massachusetts. This is the second year we've been working on it. We're working to try and get one filed in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Vermont. There's not much work there, but we
Yeah.
would pass one there
Yeah.
too.
Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Of
And we're
course.
going to resubmit again in Maine.
Yeah. And one of my observations has been at the national level, the tide has certainly turned on this. And we've been able, when Congress passed an infrastructure bill, they had a Build America, Buy America that was a Republican senator and a Democratic senator were very interested in doing that. And we've had administrations, both Democratic and Republican, that have been very interested in it. And certainly this administration really interested in it. And so I'm wondering if you've seen that change at the, at I guess the state level as well, more receptivity to Buy America.
I think as more people talk about it, and it gets to that point that you had made, that people are surprised that the money isn't going to the local communities. So I think the more that people talk about it, the more people get comfortable with it, the more they realize that there are always exceptions in case the product's not available or the price is excessive. So there are safeguards in place for the consumer, but there are safeguards in place for the communities, and that's the Buy America. We
Yeah.
need to invest long term in our employees. I know that there is no greater asset that I have than my
Hmm.
employees. And if I don't have Buy America to protect the industry, I can't protect their careers and their way of life.
Yeah.
And these are people who've chosen to be welders. They've chosen to be fitters. They love what they do. In this economy, you can go anywhere and be anything. But this is what they choose to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Still have that connection with working with their hands and their mind.
And we're a great industry. We built this country.
Hmm.
We built it up. We built the superstructures, we built the bridges.
Absolutely. So this is I guess this is a taking a stroll down memory lane question, Holly. But I know, some of the biggest successes in tracking this nationally that we have been in New England, really. And as you said, that this idea is being, is growing in popularity. You have been there, your family's been there for generations operating in manufacturing. Do you think that some of the deindustrialization or the outsourcing or whatever has contributed to that? Like, look, we got to put this to a stop. This just hadn't worked. I mean, how do you see that playing into the issue today?
Well, I think New England has been a driver in it because we have been affected from NAFTA on.
Yeah.
The outsourcing of industry and manufacturing, it doesn't allow for the people who don't want to go to college. I mean, look at the college debt that you have, and then you come out and say, I'm going to be, and you've never done it, but you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. If I hadn't gone into nursing, I wouldn't have stayed in college because I needed that hands on, I needed that practical type of career. And construction is really something that people can be proud of.
Yeah.
Growing up, we'd always drive. My father would be like, I built that building. I built that building. We built that building. It's a legacy.
Yeah.
And everyone has pride in what they've done.
Yeah. Really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that insight, Holly. One thing that I want our listeners to know about you is that even though we have worked at the Alliance for American Manufacturing, and I know that the fabricators have on a bipartisan basis, you yourself are a Republican and you've run for Republican office before. And so I wanted to ask because I certainly, as an observer of politics, have noticed, a shift in the Republican Party where it was once, I think, identified as the party of free trade, free markets, that kind of idea. Certainly, I would say nationally, over the past 8 to 10 years, that's obviously shifted dramatically,
Hmm.
right? And it seems like you've been part of that,
Yeah.
really.
Well, I know we still believe in free trade if
Hmm.
it's fair.
Sure.
I think what the realization is we don't have fair trade. There's currency manipulation, there's government subsidized, there's government owned. We can't compete with that. I was just talking with somebody else in the steel industry and Mexico. So,
Hmm.
how do we compete with Mexico when the average wage for a welder in Mexico is $1.75 an hour?
Yeah, big problem.
1.75. We're paying $30, $40 an hour for welders here. We can't compete against that. How do you compete against China that has no OSHA standards? I mean, we just can't compete. So we want open, fair trade, but we want fair trade.
Hmm.
But fair has to be the basis of it.
Absolutely. You gave a very good kind of business case for that, and which is super helpful because when we talk about this at the national level, it's much more about philosophy or personality. But you have been able, I think, to articulate extremely well the impact that this has at the business level and how it shows up and what we have to do about it for certain. One question that I have as we look ahead and in your own business is that, are you bullish for future prospects about all of this if we have the right policies in place? Do you think we can do it?
I think we can. If we have the right policies, I think we're moving that way. Right now, we have the tariffs that are going in place. I think the tariffs are a good tool in the short term and long term. Right now, I think it's a great tool to bring our trade partners to the table and renegotiate our trade deals. We need to renegotiate our trade deals because even with some of the Buy America, if they have a trade agreement, it can supersede the Buy America. So we need to renegotiate our trade deals and make sure that they are protecting our workers as much as their workers.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One thing, Holly, that I wanted to ask you about because it struck me one of the first public events we did at the Alliance for American Manufacturing was the town hall meeting with the actor John Ratzenberger in Manchester, New Hampshire, way back I think in 2008. So this was a long time ago, and what struck me about that, in addition to people just loved him from his character Cliff Clavin on Cheers, was that he was very into the trades and manufacturing and all of that. But I remember the stories from all over New Hampshire, not only of the metal fabricators, but also like towns that had once made shoes or textiles or other sorts of products that had been really and utterly devastated
Yeah.
by the jobs leaving the communities, and it was really, I think, a wake up call for me about how severe this had become.
You think about our paper industry has
Paper.
been decimated. Our blueberry industry is really impacted by foreign trade. When I was going around for my congressional race, I met with a woman who was working for a staple company, stapler. So they
Hmm.
made the staples. They're the last staple company because
Wow.
it's all been outsourced. And she was asking, she goes, is there any way that we can get Buy America for staples?
Yeah.
If it's a publicly funded purchase, it should be Buy American. She goes, we're the last company and we're fighting to stay alive.
Hard to believe that a superpower has only one company left that can make staples.
That's right.
That's that's
They
absolutely
went to
shocking.
China.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about some of the objections that have been raised about price, and obviously even within the bills, there are some safeguards against like
Hmm.
price gouging, what have you. They're very, very, very sensible to overcome. But I think one of the other things it sounds like might be a challenge is just the familiarity with the requirement, like
Yes.
that the agencies that have to, get the public works money out the door and how they approach that. What's been your observation about that, Holly?
So in New Hampshire, we've had two case studies or that have gone since our new bill. And it depends on where the money's coming from. It's public money, but they're coming out of different departments in the state. So we have to educate them and there's not a consistency across the state departments on the education of the Buy American. So we recently had a job, it was a courthouse in New Hampshire, and it went out for bid. And it was asked in the bid documents, because it stated it was Buy America, it
Hmm.
was at the a question came back about the bid documents to clarify. Well, the person who responded didn't obviously understand because they clarified it based on the may, not shall, and
Hmm.
just said referred to the bid documents. And it went back again and said, could you clarify? They just didn't clarify it because I think they didn't understand it enough. And so the whole job ended up being held up because they had to go back out and be reevaluated whether it had to be rebid because it was given out on the wrong pretense. So we really need to do a better job of educating different state departments that are giving out the contracts on what the requirements are. So
Yeah.
there needs to be an educational component when Buy America is passed.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that certainly gives us some follow up too to like how to do this. And I would just say that from the state perspective, because the resources are relatively scarce compared to the federal government, for people who say like we're being exceptional here and we're being kind of the bullies on the block, it's simply not the case. That there is I think it's well understood that particularly when it comes to tax dollars that localization is a best practice and makes sense for all the reasons that you said about the what economists would call indirect spending that
Right.
results from it as
And
well.
and there's no way we could be competitive when you look at the wage salary discrepancy, you
Yeah.
look at the currency exchange rates, you look at the currency manipulation, you look at all the regulatory issues that we have that other foreign countries don't have. But if they come here and they build a plant here and they have to go under all our regulations, pay our taxes, pay our same wages, then it's a fair game.
Sure.
And I think that's part of what these tariffs are doing is trying to encourage foreign countries to build manufacturing plants here, build up our workforce here, pay taxes here, and reinvest in our local communities. I think that's a win-win for everybody. And then the Buy America keeps that work here.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing it like that. And Holly, one last question for you, because this is a very practical question as a as a business owner. The it used to be the case where I think a lot of small and mid-sized manufacturers could just go to the local high school or go to employees, to their relatives, and say, "Hey, let's come work here," right? And
Hmm.
it used to be a very common way. A lot of those pipelines have been kind of shut off, right? There's not a lot of shop classes left and all of that. So I'm wondering how you're able to attract workers to a business that a lot of people might not even think exists anymore,
Right.
but that can be vibrant and fulfilling and thriving and a well-paying job.
We're lucky in New Hampshire. We have a very strong, robust CTE program in the high school, which is the career technical education. We think of the old shop.
Yeah.
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 So we have a very strong program here in New Hampshire. I think we have at least nine, maybe 11 schools that offer welding.
Wow.
So
Wow.
a group of us in New Hampshire, three structural steel fabricators, we got together and we started a welding competition. So we get all the kids from the CTEs together and we give out scholarship. to the community colleges, because we also have 3 community colleges in New Hampshire that offer welding. And it happens to be that each of those welding community college programs are located next to one of us.
Oh,
So it's really ideal.
yeah.
So we give scholarships to go on to learn welding. We found after the first 2 years that the kids don't really want the scholarships, they just want the trophy. A
Mm,
lot of kids who are good at welding don't want to do it as a career.
yeah.
So now the competition, the money goes to the CTEs to give them equipment to train welders. And what I found over the years is that a kid coming out of high school with a welding class is as valuable to me as a kid coming out of the community college welding program. Within a year, they'll start at the same salary. Within a year, they're at the same technical skill. It's all about what they bring. We
Mhm.
also have a lot of people who will just come in. We have Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's down the street, and they'll come in and say, I'd like to be a welder. They've never held a torch. We train them.
Yeah.
Some will make it till the break and then they leave. It's not what they were expecting because they come in, they're overwhelmed by the size of the members. We have a couple tons
Sure.
piece of steel that's flipping. Sometimes the building will shake as they flip it. Others will stay.
Yeah.
We also have a program with the military,
Hmm.
Seal Bridge. So the military will train soldiers who are separating within 6 months to go and learn a skill. So we have a welding program, and in the last several years, we've put through 15 soldiers. They don't necessarily stay with us, they don't have an obligation to stay with us, but we're putting more welders into the pipeline. It's all about increasing the pipeline. So we're lucky that way. The hardest part for us is because the cost of living is so high here
Yeah.
in New England, keeping them here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I think to your great credit, Holly, you've put skin in the game, you've been innovative about it, you've been able to, draw from both the high school, the, community college and do all the right things. And the great thing about it is that, I guess, thanks in part to some of these Buy America efforts that you've been working on, is that there should be more opportunities
Right.
for the young workers coming on.
And the Buy America assures the survivability of our industry, which then assures that there are jobs for these people who want to work in welding, who want to work in steel fabrication, who want to stay close to home. We need to make sure that we protect their opportunities. It is so crucial to our communities that we invest and reinvest in our communities. And the only way to ensure that our tax dollars are doing what they're supposed to be, of supporting our communities, is by making sure they stay here locally and domestically. And I've had the opportunity to ride my motorcycle cross country, and we have some tiny, tiny little towns that I don't know how they're surviving.
Yeah.
And we need to invest that money, Buy America, here to make sure that those small little towns across the West and Midwest can be viable and there's opportunity for their citizens. So I would just ask people to continue to advocate for Buy America on all levels.
Awesome. And that is coming from a motorcycle riding, well-educated nursing, family business executive and political candidate too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. There's nothing that Holly does not do.
I
So,
don't make coffee really well. Thank God for Keurig.
perfect. Holly, thank you so much for joining us today on the Manufacturing Report podcast. And thank you for your advocacy on Buy America.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.